All right, welcome back. So the title of this mini lecture is Colonies and Empire. Now, we're really, when we're going to talk about this, and in talking about five basics to understand this process better, we're really talking primarily about European initiated actions against typically non-European individuals. So we're going to be talking about the 1400s really up through the late early 1700s. And there's going to be kind of a number of aspects of this. So, all right, let's dig in. So the first thing to know would be East India Company, right? East India Company. Now, a few different European countries had East India companies. The governments of these countries would typically create these companies with the understanding being that these companies would then facilitate colonial operations designed to benefit both the country and the company itself, right? So it's kind of a partnership with government and commerce together. So think of it as if, all the big companies you can think of today, the really popular ones, kind of had their own armies to back them up, right? And the law to back them up, right? This kind of thing. So the East India Company. So the British have this, right? The English have this. This is early 1600s. But again, there are a number of other European countries that have these kinds of things. Secondly, the Dutch East India Company. So England will make inroads into modern India, Pakistan, Kashmir, Bangladesh, these areas by the 18th century, more formally by the 18th century. The Dutch are going to be spending their time in the Pacific region and across Asia as well at the time, again, trading in spices and a number of other resources and becoming quite profitable in the 17th century. It's often referred to as a Dutch Golden Age, but this is partly due to colonial aims and, of course, real inequity. All right, third would have to be factory forts. So the Portuguese and others do this. They kind of a lot of European powers do this, right? So you kind of centralize your colonial efforts by this fort, which also doubles as sort of a commerce hub, and you can kind of centralize power there, and kind of from there, kind of build yourself out. All right. Fourthly, would of course be the Royal Africa Company. So I'm sure some of you are at least moderately familiar with aspects of the process of the African slave trade. Now, this is a process that has, thankfully gotten greater study and understanding in the last few years, but it's a process that we still struggle with in terms of how we talk or write about it, right? So more often than not, sadly, many of the historians talking and write about it, they tend to look like, well, me. And when they have in the past, they have talked about this or written about this in a dispassionate way that can be mildly, offensive at best to flat out racist, in many cases. So they'll use phrases like triangle trade, which of course dehumanizes, the individuals who were a part of this, and they'll use other, worse things as well in describing these individuals. So Royal Africa Company. So the British, they will come to control the trade in people from Africa, from the continent of Africa, and they will corporatize it. So, individuals who are enslaved, they are forcibly brought to different forts in different areas on the western coast of Africa, whereby ships from the company will come down, and then it'll eventually take those individuals across the Atlantic, primarily to the Caribbean, and then eventually going up either to North America or down south. So again, 3/4 of all individuals enslaved from Africa will end up in Brazil, but the Royal Africa Company, of course, will become quite profitable arm of England at this point. All right. So the fifth would be dates. So there's a lot of different dates for us to know, but the first, I think, that would be good for us to understand would be 1492, right? So this is the date in which Columbus arrives in the Americas. 1519 would be the next one. This is the date that Cortez and his men land in modern Mexico. 1607, this is the date that John Smith and his merry band of individuals will arrive in Jamestown and found Jamestown. In 1608 is the year that Samuel de Champlain will found Quebec. So there's a lot to this, but these should be good to kind of get you started. Thanks.